Welcome to this week's episode of the IBC Roundtable, where every Tuesday we're diving deep into your favorite subject matter, the infinite banking concept. This week we're peeling back the onion on how to share the movement. What do you think I'm talking about there, Russ?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, when you say movement, what specific movement are you referring to?
Well, what I'm saying is sometimes we get stuck in that maybe as we're sharing the idea of the infinite banking concept, we get focused in on the insurance policy. But there's so much more than an insurance policy. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, it's not about the insurance policy at all. And I do think that we can complicate the simple when we're trying to tell people how we're trying to achieve and how we are achieving financial freedom. And we start with a whole life policy as the first thing we talk about.
And what happens? Your friend just bolts the other way and they said, you're a moron. You just bought really expensive insurance.
Yeah, it must be that you are not as smart as I am if you would do something dumb like that. And this is the part when we want to help our friends who are struggling. They're nervous about, hey, is the market going to crash? Is that going to then impact my jobs? How can I spend more time with my family? You know the answers to those questions, but sometimes it's difficult to share exactly how it works. That's what we're covering, right?
That's right. We've invited guests on who are sharing this movement with others so that you can learn from them and you can learn, how do I take this gold? I've found gold, and how do I make it to where other people can join me in the same journey?
Yeah, well, we know that sometimes the success is measured by how much money we make in our jobs, but yet that a lot of times requires a lot more hours, and trading those hours for dollars are taking us away from our precious families who are growing up before our very eyes. And we don't want to experience that, nor do we want the people that we know, like, and love to experience that. So let's share a message, a movement, Joey, with them through this episode. I hope you'll enjoy it. Let's dive in. Belly up.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome into our discussion today. I am sitting here with the Italian stallion, Mr. Joey Murray.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm great.
Mark, this is going to be not your first time on the show, but maybe some people are hearing you for the first time. So welcome, Mark Haraguchi. How are you today, Mark?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
And lastly, but not least, we got Ernie Brown. How are you, Ernie?
I am messed up. My name is messed up.
And I'm a second co-host here, Russ Morgan. I am so excited that you guys are listening in to this discussion today, because this one is something that is near and dear to my heart. Because if it wasn't for someone many years ago sharing this message with me, I wouldn't be here to talk to you about it. And the conversation today is about spreading the message, spreading the movement, helping people get out of the darkness, if you will, and shining light. So the first question I want to throw out there, and I'll let you jump in, Joey, as you respond to this, is why do you believe that we are not taught in either high school or college of what retirement looks like? What is the way for us to get out of the workforce as fast as possible?
I think it's part of the programming. I think it's part of the programming that we have very obedient employees. That's what we are being groomed for in today's education system. And otherwise we would be learning different strategies like we teach at Wealth Without Wall Street in the schools.
Mark, what's your
take on it?
What's your initial take on that question?
I'm definitely in line with what Joey said. I recently finished, finally made it through thanks to COVID and some time on my hands, the Creature from Jekyll Island, and kind of a disturbing read, but they pretty much hammer that point home in there too, which is we're not being educated to be entrepreneurs, to be inventors, to be creators. We're being educated to be indoctrinated to be the workforce.
Which by the way, let me add this in. I don't want it to always be like, hey, conspiracy theorist. I think partly being an entrepreneur is difficult, right? Is it harder to teach somebody to be an entrepreneur, or is it easier to just mainstream and say, hey, here's a factory, and you just get in line and you do this, you turn this bottle cap and you let it go. Like, that's so much more simple to do on a mass scale, right? So I don't want it to sound like, hey, well, everybody's against us, but I do think it's a skill. Like, it's a specialized thing that not everybody can teach.
Well, you asked, the question was, why were we not raised to think this way? And we automatically made the assumption that it was the school system, the indoctrination. That was the underlying assumption.
Right.
What if that's wrong? My parents didn't teach me so much about money. My first experience with money, well, was always working for money from a young age, but was when we had a financial planner in our house helping me get started with money. So where was the parents' education? Why is it the education system? Why isn't it within the family?
That's good. That's a good point.
I also want to bring this out, is that it's funny. We asked the question and we all started jumping in from different angles on this. But really, if you think about it, it's okay if we're an employee, right? I mean, I don't think we have to be entrepreneurs. I'm thankful that somebody wants to be a trash man, right? I mean, that there's beautiful jobs that are done to the glory of God by all people, and they may work for people in that. But my point in asking that question is more so in line with, if you think about this from the standpoint of, why are we not taught of how to get to a different position? Why are we not taught in schools what it looks like on the other side of work? Does that resonate at all? Like, when we're thinking about this, what are the limiting things keeping us from getting out of the dark, if you will? Because let me paint a picture here. And I just was thinking through this with you yesterday, Joey. I'm envisioning being in a tunnel, and I don't know how many of you guys have driven through, whether it's New York, Boston, one of these major cities that have these long tunnels. And I'm just thinking, flying into Boston, right? Is it Logan Airport? Is that what Boston is, Mark?
Yep.
Yeah. And when you're coming out of Logan, you got to go through a pretty long tunnel.
Yeah.
Right? And in order to get into the city, you got to come through a really long tunnel. Of course, they got it lit, but just imagine the lights weren't on in this tunnel.
Right.
It's super dark, and there's just going to be like this small bit of light at the very end.
Like a speck of light.
Very small. And if you've never been on the other side of that tunnel, you don't even know what it looks like. You don't know what it looks like on the other end. And you might not even have perspective of how, in the dark, what the distance is between you and to that light.
Right.
And so I want to start thinking about us trying to get to freedom is us trying to seek that light, but yet we're in the dark. So when we start talking about things that may be in the dark, what is hampering us? What is limiting us from being able to be successful? What would be some of those things?
We hear this from a lot of people we interview, and I think just you and I can share the same thoughts. But thinking about that tunnel, a tunnel is just by nature, it's limiting, right? It's got walls around it. It's keeping some things out, but it's also keeping you in. So I love this picture that we're going after here. But ultimately, I think people have limiting beliefs. That's a first thing that I consistently hear from high-powered entrepreneurs that we're interviewing, and people of all different classes. They all say, well, man, I grew up thinking this, or had this lid of how much I was worth, or I was told this, or I didn't understand what money was about, and I just thought had to come about by these negative means. So they have these beliefs, and that can hamper us on this whole journey, for sure. So that would be the first thing I would think.
Mark, what do you think? What are some of those limiting items that may exist that prevent us from even knowing what the light is?
As we were talking about this, I had a flashback to a movie, A Few Good Men, and when they're cross-examining and they've got the Marine Corps handbook and they're talking about going to get chow in Gitmo, and he's like, so tell me in the book where it told you where the mess hall was. It doesn't. Well, so you're telling me you didn't eat anything? No, I just kind of followed the herd at breakfast, lunch, and dinner time. And I think that's another aspect of this is, what is our herd doing? What are the people, the friends, the company, the family we keep? And it's not a dig on them. It's not that they're leading us to the wrong place. It's just, what is the group's understanding? I think Ernie had a great point in there too, of we see things and we have to be careful. We have to understand, well, the people that are sharing stuff with us, what is their perspective? How did they get that perspective that they're now sharing with us?
So good. Ernie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Joey, I like your point about you're just kept inside. You have exposure, limited exposure externally, but then also it's not like we're not doing nothing. We're plenty busy. And if we keep always doing what we've always done, we're just going to continue to get what we've always got. It seems like it's one of those types of deals. It's not that we're naturally just spending all of our time looking to get outside of the tunnel. We're just going down our own path.
I wonder too, if as we're in the dark, when I think darkness, I think back to when I was a little kid, and even now with my children, my 7-year-old probably most vividly, is when there is darkness is when he's the most anxious.
Yep.
Right. And I'm so eager for people to see the light, because I know that anxiety exists right there. When you're in the dark, you don't know what's around you, right? You don't know what's around the corner, what potential treachery exists,
for good or for bad.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, you love to play golf. If you think about, what does a caddy do for a golfer?
I mean, in some cases, gives them confidence. It tells them the way, like, all right, with this hole kind of dog legs left, you want to aim for that tree. I mean, they're giving you direction.
They're giving you direction. They're guiding you through the darkness. But think about when it comes to finance, and you were talking about having a financial advisor or something come into your house. What's the likelihood that the financial advisor most people are working with are in the light versus in the dark with them?
Very high chance that they're in the dark.
Well, let's define that. What does that mean? What does it mean for them to be in the light?
So if you had already been in the city of Boston, right? You'd already gone through the tunnel. You knew as soon as that tunnel opened up what you were going to see in the city, right? You knew what freedom looked like because you were experiencing it, or you were around it constantly, right?
Right.
That, to me, is what the light is. So is the advisor someone who is in the light, or are they back as deep in the tunnel with you as they possibly can be?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're at least further down the road, and they know the path to get to freedom.
So what I'm asking you is, do you believe most advisor, coaches, planners, whatever you want to call them, are in the light or have seen the light, or do you think they sit in the darkness?
100% in the dark. Not 100% of them, but I think the vast majority.
What's your experience, Mark? Because obviously I've been in this world probably the longest as it relates to this specific issue, but I'm just
well, you're
interested.
also you're a lot older.
It is true. I think I've got Mark by a good 6 months. All right, go ahead, Mark. What's your experience? Because obviously as a pilot, you interacted with a lot of different financial people over the years. There's probably different people that you've worked with inside your company's 401k plans and outside and so forth. Has your experience said that most of the advisors that you've worked with would probably have been in the light, or do you think that they're in the dark?
I think they've done the best they can with the information that they have. And they're, unfortunately, they're kind of given a script, and they know where the lanes are. Give you an example of this. When I was researching utilizing the CARES Act for my 401k exodus, when I called my representation that represented my union in terms of liaising for the 401k company, when I asked those questions of, all right, I want to take a withdrawal, I want to take a loan, how do I do this? The response back was, please don't tell anyone else you're doing this.
what was the reason behind that?
And I said, do tell. And he said, look, I know you, I know what you're going to go do this money with, or do with this money. And I know that you've researched and whatnot, but we don't want the majority of the other people who don't have that background, who don't have that foresight. He said, because we're pretty confident we know what they're going to do. They're going to go buy some shiny truck or some brand new boat, or buy something that's going to be a liability as opposed to an asset that's going to generate income for him. And he said, we just don't really want that out there. If you could please keep that under your hat, that'd be great.
That's really interesting. Well, as we start to wrap this up, I want to share just one little thing that just made me think about this topic and the purpose of our discussion today. And as we get ready to hear from some of our clients who have been a great advocate, a great guide, not only themselves, but are also sharing this with others. It reminded me of a movie that Megan and I just watched recently. Have you guys seen the new Harriet Tubman movie?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. What was your initial take from it?
Oh, it's powerful. I mean, she's the kind of hero I want to be, I mean, for sure.
Well, have you seen it, Ernie?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. I think you ought to go watch it. And by the way, my history is a little sketchy, so if it wasn't perfectly historic, and if I repeat something that was just dramatized for cinema, excuse me on this. But one of the things I think we all know about her background is that she was a slave who made it to Philadelphia, used the Underground Railroad, and ultimately the Underground Railroad got a lot of prominence because of things that she did in her life. And through the movie, okay, I'm just going to repeat the movie's version, whether it's perfect or not. You guys can forgive me on that. But one of the things is that she left where she was to get to freedom. She gets to Philadelphia. She gets in this network, and they're helping her get her life. Harriet Tubman was not her real name, and that was a name that she took once she was there, and they were helping her get acclimated into the new free world. And she goes back to the group who had kind of been assistants in that and says, I want to go back. I want to get my husband and I want to get my family. And they were like, no, don't do that. It took you so much to get here. I mean, the likelihood that you would get caught on your way back or on your way back here is too high. You can't take that risk. She goes, oh, I'm doing it. I was asking, who can I get to help me? And they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And against all of their, just hoping that she wouldn't do that, she goes back, she gets her family and starts bringing people back, and then just starts repeating that process over and over and over. And it just made me think about what we're talking about today is that somebody who made it to the light, and instead of just basking in that light, instead of just being lazy in that they're going back into the dark to bring people to the light. And I love that just imagery. I love, obviously, her story. But I hope through today's roundtable, as we transition into our inner circle discussion with our clients on spreading the message and spreading this movement. And obviously, we're all on the journey, right? Some of us have seen more of the light than others.
Right.
But we're all on this journey, and we're getting closer and closer, and we're being exposed to more and more of that light. Because when you think of that tunnel, as the further down you get, the more you start to see on what's on the other side. And it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and you start to see the opportunities that exist, and you can't unsee those things once they're there. And I love that about today is that we're going to get to hear from that. So if you're not a member of our inner circle, this is an opportunity for you to go, because you're going to get to hear these discussions. You can go back and listen to these in the past, but I want you to go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle.
Yes. Yeah. You need to join the conversation. This is the place where we are talking freedom, talking about the limiting things that may have been holding you back from that before is your network. Possibly your network could be the thing that's holding you back. This is the kind of network that's going to bring you to freedom. They're on the same path. They're going to be pulling you along when you don't want to in some cases. Right. And so, yeah, this is the place to be a part of. And we're grateful to be on that journey with you.
Mark, any last thoughts on that as far as resources or things people could think of as it relates to sharing this message when you have this sort of insight, not to let it die on the vine with you?
Yeah, when I would be at my flying job, flying with a brand new first officer, they're in their 20s, they're super excited, they've just got their first job, first real airline job, and I remember the saying I heard of, not playing the game of I have a secret. I mean, if you've got something, it's valuable. Why are you keeping it to yourself? And so when I share this with open-minded, coworkers and friends and whatnot, It's coming from a place of, here's something I've learned. I'll lay it out there for you. And oh, by the way, if I had known about this when I was your age at my very first airline job, I said, we would not be here today having this conversation, because I would be somewhere else. Actually, I'd be in the back sipping a Mai Tai while you're up here working.
That's right. You'd be handing me one of those warm, hot towels, right?
That's awesome.
I love it. Well, Ernie, any final thoughts as we finish today's discussion?
Well, before we go to that, I just think it's so fun to think about the people who we're about to be talking to, and just knowing them, some of their stories, and excited to hear them share just more about what they've accomplished. But I think the thing that gets me excited about experiencing what's on the other side of the tunnel is really fun. But maybe what makes that even better is to do that with other people. And I think that's what this inner circle is providing for us, is we can get there faster, but we can also do it with other people. And I think that's one of the biggest blessings of what I do on a daily basis of meeting with these people, is get to hear some of their stories. And we've been hearing that more and more. So I'm just so excited to just continue to hear what people are creating, and then how they're able to draw other people to join them in what they're doing.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the IBC Roundtable, and we hope that you will join us in the inner circle by going to www.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.